July 25th meeting of the Planning Policy Commission. Tonight, we're going to continue our discussion on amendments to the comp plan. Tonight, we're going to talk again about parks and recreation. Before we do that, I would like to welcome the Park Board members that are here tonight so that we can get their input, and to thank Ron for being a member of the task force that went through the comp plan and made great changes to it. So I want to thank all of them that was responsible for that. Before we start, we do, as normal, have to approve the minutes for the last meeting. And so I need a motion to approve the minutes of the July 11th meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the Planning Policy Commission meeting on July 11th, 2019.
Do I have a second? We have 2 seconds, so I guess it's pretty good. Discussion. I assume you read the minutes and you have no questions or discussions about the minutes? None? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of approval of the July 11th minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anybody abstaining? Hearing none, I will, the minutes are approved. So we're going to go right into discussion on the park plan. Just as a reminder, we spent several meetings last year discussing the strategic plan and the park board plan. And we voted to approve the plan, but we did a little caveat and asked them to come back a year later and specify three or four things that we asked them to improve upon. And so that's what we're going to discuss tonight. We're not going to approve the plan itself because it's already been approved by the City Council. We're just looking at updating what has been approved and our concerns that we've voiced last year. So with that, we are going to have the liaison, the city liaison to the park board, Jennifer, give us an update of what's going on. So take it away.
Thank you very much, Joan, and thank you, Planning Policy Commission, for having us, and thank you, Brad, for being here. Before we get going on our presentation, I first want to let you know the packet that was handed out tonight. As you all know, when you go through a revision process, there are times where you get multiple versions of a document. Unfortunately, an older copy was included in your meeting packet. What was sent out earlier today and is before you is the final version. We will walk through later what was missing. What was missing was included in your packet in the track changes. So if you did go through that, you will notice those items. But there's one item that we'll specify on here as we go through. So I just wanted to extend my apologies to the commission for that mix-up. We were out of town and not able to get it to you sooner, so our sincere apologies. I am here tonight with my coworker, Shante Floriani, also park planner and project administrator. And as Joan so nicely said, we were here last year in June going through the park strategic plan update. That was a process that took us about 1.5 years. Had a lot of community engagement, input with the park board as the steering committee, and had a lot of fun and got here, and council adopted that plan in July. When we came to you last June, the Planning Policy Commission issued your findings of fact that really to discuss 3 main items as part of this. One was a general reorganization of the goals and policies that tracks issues identified by the public as areas of concern and facilitates ease of use by the public. Stronger language around wayfinding and signage. That is the former policy number. And formulate a scope for green Issaquah, including habitat restoration, open space, wildlife and riparian corridors, maintenance of noxious weeds, and tree canopy. Included in your packet are the original goals and policies that were in the park strategic plan, our track changes version, and a clean version, which I handed out to you tonight. And so those are the three main documents, and we'll be talking about our processes that we went through in doing so. After the Planning Policy Commission issued their findings of fact, we went to City Council, and they adopted the Park Strategic Plan and provided two directives: that we were returned to you within 1 year and initiate a Green Issaquah Urban Forest program within 1 year in the 2019 Parks and Recreations Work Plan, including a citywide tree canopy analysis. That work is currently underway. So when we look at what the PPC's purview really is, items A and B are being addressed really in the goals and policies that are before you tonight. Item C is being addressed as a work plan item as per City Council directive. At the beginning of this year, the Park Board created an ad hoc committee to address the changes as recommended by you, the PPC. In that committee, there were 3 Park Board members: Brad Book, who is here with us tonight, he's our Park Board Chair, Jonathan Richardson, Chris Kovac, and Planning Policy Commission member Ron Fall. Over the we met 5 times over 5 times over a 2-month period. Each meeting was a minimum of 2 hours, plus homework was given, sorry guys, and each Park Board member or ad hoc committee member spent about 15 hours or more of their own time in this effort of reorganization. So I want to extend a great thank you to them for their hard work in this effort. In our meetings, our first and second meeting was more of just a general overview, kind of breaking things down into some buckets and groupings. We did identify 2 new goals in that kind of buckets and groupings list. The third and fourth meetings, we really got down into the nitty-gritties of each policy, language, wording, and then our 5th meeting was really going over the complete package and looking at it as a full synthesis for the meetings. And as part of this, I will hand this over to Shantae Floriani, who is going to start walking us through the reorganization. We're just going to give you a high-level effort of what we went through so you understand the thought. So with that, here's Shantae.
Hi, nice to meet you all. So yeah, as Jennifer said, I will walk you through sort of our process for modifying the goals and policies. So this image that you see on the screen is basically a screenshot from how we started to organize all of the goals and subsequent policies. And the first thing we did for tracking is we actually numbered each policy so that we could track it throughout the process as we go through all the iterations. And then what this shows is what we call buckets as goals, and then grouping. So identifying policies that have like categories or themes and grouping those together and seeing which bucket they fall into to best fit with the overall document. So some policies may have repetitive language but are housed in the appropriate goal and subcategory it fulfills. For example, art may be mentioned in 2 different areas. And in this process, we identified 2 new goals. So we went from a total of 6 goals to 8. And those 2 new goals were connectivity and environmental preservation. The subsequent policies under the new goals were existing and were just rearranged under these new goal buckets. So I could just read you the 2 new goals. So connectivity, which is goal C, connect parks, neighborhoods, business districts, schools, and other activity areas together through an integrated system of trails and open spaces. And then the other added goal, environmental preservation, which is goal E. Preserve, enhance, and protect a coordinated system of parks and public open spaces to preserve the city's natural character, sustain its urban forest resources, and enhance its natural systems, wildlife habitat, and wildlife corridors as a legacy for future generations. So in this process, we also identified gaps that, and then in that process, we found 5 new policies that were added. And you can see here, so we have a policy C9, which is a connectivity goal. C9 and C10 are both connectivity goals. D was a planning and design considerations, or I'm sorry, policy, excuse me. And G is under goal, is under the partnerships goal. And again, so the detail of each policy was reviewed for appropriate placement, sentence structure, tense, and repetitions. So as part of the findings of Fact 2B, we just wanted to point out the added language for stronger language around signage and wayfinding. That was specifically requested by the Planning Policy Commission. And so you can see the added goal here. There's 2 other, or I'm sorry, policy. There's 2 other policies that are in under signage. They were existing. We just pulled them out as 2 separate policies for added clarity. So as Jennifer handed out, you can see generally the new organization, new format, and the new format was to, for clarity and to fit within the park strategic plan, and to for a better user experience and facilitate ease of use by the public. So again, in that process of reviewing the goals and policies, the language was simplified to remove redundancy and to add clarity. Public comments received during the park strategic plan adoption process were reviewed and taken into consideration by the ad hoc committee in the revised goals and policies before you. And then here, I'll just walk through the version correction that we handed out to you tonight. So that you can see the items with red lines next to them. They were not included in the packet and in your handout. They are in your handout tonight. But they were in the track changes version. So all of these were existing. There was just D12, which is at the bottom of this screen here, was the only new policy. The other policies in red were existing. And then same with these D13 and D14 were existing policies that were just broken into 2 from the original. And then goal B8 was again an existing policy that was omitted from what we had given to you in the packet. With that, I will pass it back over to Jennifer to conclude.
So just a comment, I really appreciate the way it's broken out and the green color. I'm sure the green is appropriate for trees and all the other stuff that you're working on. but I think it's a lot easier to read, and I really appreciate all the work you did to do that.
So in advance of the Planning Policy Commission meeting, we did receive a public comment and just wanted to bring to your attention that we feel those items have been addressed in the items before you. One of the questions was to include language that describes consistent and easily understandable public process. We do have existing policy in the packet before you, D1, that states, ensure that parks are designed utilizing a thoughtful planning process that includes community engagement, creates a sense of place, and integrates landscape art, buffers, waterways, corridors, trails, parks, courtyards, and plazas. Also, as part of the city's public and transparent process, we do also have a community public engagement toolkit that we use whenever we take on a new project or we engage with the community, and that is used on a regular basis. The second item comment that was received asked to please include a policy that parks will create a process and criteria for partnerships with for-profit business should they be included within our park system. This is somewhat addressed in two ways. Goal G really addresses extensive types of partnerships that may come before the city and proposals. And also in the Park Strategic Plan, when this was before you, you may remember we set up a toolkit that is used. So when there is a new idea that comes through, it's a two-step toolkit, excuse me, it's been a long day. The first page is really the vetting to see if it's a viable project or not. And then the second phase of the toolkit, this is a checklist, and then the second page talks about project prioritization and how it fits with our existing projects. Just because it may be a new shiny opportunity doesn't mean it's necessarily something that we need to pursue right away, and see how it fits with all of our other projects. So we feel that too has been addressed within the Park Strategic Plan as adopted and within existing policy. So just to sum up the process that we went through, the ad hoc committee met in February and March of this year. We did, in April, send the draft goals and policies to a reader team. It is the same reader team that was utilized in the Park Strategic Plan adoption process. Because they were already familiar, we sent those to the people, and there's a list of the reader team members. We did receive some comments back, but most of them were about planning at large and not specific to the goals and policies themselves. This did go before the Park Board in April for review as a draft, and in May they made a recommendation, and tonight here we are before you, the Planning Policy Commission, and pending your determination tonight, we will take this to City Council at a date yet to be determined. Just to sum up, first, I would like to ask if the Park Board, since we do have a couple of committee members, I would like to invite them if they would like to say a word or two before we wrap up about the process and the engagement that happened as part of this and the effort put forth, if they wanted to add any additional comments. Brad or Ron?
So why don't we start with you? Do you have any great words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom were already included in this document. I think words of wisdom were already included in this document. It was a good team effort to identify some of the concerns that PPC had last year. Frankly, I don't know how comfortable we were initially when we adopted this within the Park Strategic Plan. A lot of our efforts were in different portions of it, so I'm glad that this got reworked here now, and I think it's a lot easier to read, better organized, got rid of a lot of the wordiness and duplications. I don't know, I'm pretty happy with it. It wasn't necessarily an exciting process, but one that we needed to go through. it was really good to have Ron there with us to give some insight about how you might look at things here too when it came back to you. Really, the heavy lifting was done by Jennifer and Shantae. Ad hoc committee, we were there more as an advisory than to redo everything. So I want to give a big shout out to those two for all the work they did. Any questions for me?
No. Rod, do you have any updates?
I think one of the topics that we really vetted was the organization, because there was a lot of feedback that the original document was hard to organize or hard to understand, because a lot of people got tripped up on the way it was organized. And it may have spoken well to one type of audience, but the other 3 out of 4 audiences looked at it and didn't understand it. So we spent a lot of effort reorganizing it. I think that's really the key. And then we went through, we didn't wordsmith it, but we went through from a high level and said, this policy looks like we need to maybe add a policy or add a section here and say, you know what, we're missing this area, like in the tree canopy and so on. There was a lot of work. Brad, I liked working with Brad. That was great. Working with the Parks Board. I thank you for the invite. That was awesome. You guys did do most of the heavy lifting. We were just kind of there for an advisory, and I do appreciate the invite to PPC. And so I think this is a great document, and I'd like to, hear the feedback, and I'm ready to approve it.
The one thing that I really liked was the part that it's more readable. I like the fact that you separated some of the wordy language. I think it makes it more accessible, more easy to read for anybody who wants to go into the park plan. So that part of it I really like. I like the way you organized it, the goals, and changed because they did meet different criteria, and by separating them into 2 really makes it easy to read. I really appreciate that. That's a really good positive. And you did.
One more thing, and actually Jeff points this out in some of the discussions that we had, is it was difficult for us to not spend more time than we already did on this, because wordsmithing is very time consuming. And so we had to kind of watch ourselves and not try and redo everything. That was not the intent of this project. It was more designed for reorganization purposes and to minimize some of the duplications and make it easier. But just something to point out is that this will be something in the next update.
You just took my next statement.
Oh, I did?
That's
Oh, sorry,
okay.
Sorry. The wordsmithing will be something that will be more intense in the later process than when this goes through, and you'll be able to tell what the timing of that is.
Yeah, so the Park Strategic Plan, it gets updated every 4 years. We do this for 2 reasons. One, to help update the park element of the comprehensive plan, as well as stay eligible for Recreation and Conservation Office funding. So we will start this process in probably less than 4 years now. We will get the ball rolling. And during that, we will be addressing some other issues that were discussed in this document, like level of service, and doing a more thorough update of the goals and policies. As Brad mentioned, this was an exercise of reorganization, but where we did find gaps, where we did find a new goal to house some underlying policies were needed, we did take those liberties in addressing this. So we tried to stay within the guise of what was our direction was, and clean things up as best we could, knowing there is going to be a full update in the next update in about 4 years.
Rod?
And to Brad's point, one of the things that we really did work on was removing a lot of duplication. There was a significant amount of duplication across different goals, and so what we did was, that's how we came up with some of the other goals, is we moved the goals from one area to another subject, and probably eliminated maybe a third of the,
Yeah.
of the goals? And
Yeah, quarter
because
to a
we-
third.
Yeah, and just reworded some of the goals that they were more broad, but I think that helps make it a lot more.
And to help with the readability, to build on that, Ron, is some of the phrasing, there had been so many updates of some of the goals and policies that when we went through, let me go back a slide or two here. What we did is we have, your general topics or subcategories underneath a goal, but we also put the most important part of the goal or keywords at the front and kind of switched how some of the goals were worded for consistency between all of them. So, create and implement performance levels, implement and actionable, ensure comprehensive plan goals, and those we highlighted for quick queuing. In the old update, we did have titles on each of the policies, and we took those off, and really the new subcategories really address some of that as well. We spent a lot of time, not so much wordsmithing, but making sure they all read in the same language and sentence formatting, which also helped with a lot of that duplication and repetition and bits and pieces here and there. So this is a much leaner, cleaner, meaner version of the goals and policies.
When you look at this, when you're talking about wordsmithing, and it's important to make it easily to read and understandable, but I think what's in it is more important than being concerned about what word goes where, or how, if it's an and or an is or whatever. I think you've covered every possible, when I read it, I couldn't imagine anything else in it, so I'm sure there is, but I really think you've covered just about everything, and that's what's important to me, is what's in it. Oh, good job.
Well, thank you. Well, the ad hoc committee put in a lot of effort, so thank them as well.
Well, it's nice when you end up with a good product that you can say, I'm proud of this. And I think with everything we went through, getting it, and the meetings we had before you even started this, I think it's come a long way, and I think it's kind of like how I would write something, very, this is the goal, and then you put things underneath it, it makes sense, and so I'm thinking of myself as a normal person, not a data person or somebody that wants more specifics. It's readable. Yeah. I had to pick somebody, so he was the first one here. So anyway, so are there any questions? Randy, do you have any questions? I know there's a lot of...
Actually, I'm not, since it's done, I'm not sure that the notes that I made are relevant. I'm still trying to learn.
They can't hear you,
So I'm not sure that I should take up any time because I'm still learning what this process or this commission is about. So the notes that I made, I think, are it's done. So I don't think there's any percentage of me bringing them up, except for one thing. In the list of threats to the park, there were two things cited: noxious weeds. And the coincidence couldn't have been more ironic because our community, our neighborhood, is in the process of identifying potential for catastrophic wildfire. And I would just suggest that perhaps one word might be added. If it's after the new study, it's considered to be relevant and appropriate. In addition to noxious weeds and invasive species, that fire be considered as another threat to parks. That's it. But we have a very serious problem in our town that we're just starting to address at the neighborhood level.
So if I can go back to item C here,
Yeah.
which was Also part of the council direction is part of our work plan. We are currently under contract with Forterra to start an urban forest management program, and also working and Green Issaquah program for the city. Forterra is going to be going out and having a subcontractor take a look at all of our facilities, creating a report, looking at some of the threats within each acre of our park space, hopefully here soon. And so the Green Issaquah initiative is really going to house a lot of different, the urban forest management program, excuse me, is going to house a lot of different things. The Green Issaquah initiative, the tree canopy update, and I think some of the information that's learned there will also help feed that information as far as future fire, because that is a weakness, I think, citywide, as far as our preparedness.
It is.
Yeah.
You have listed wildfires.
The slide,
Go to the
previous
next.
slide,
Next slide. Nope.
one before. Yep. Open space,
Yep.
wildfire.
Oh, wildlife.
Wildlife, yeah.
Oh, I saw.
Fires not.
I said I
Fires,
forgot my
I'm just,
glasses.
my point is that the simple addition of that word for people that do read it would, I think, cause people to go, huh? That most people in town now are simply, I wasn't on my own street until about 3 weeks. So that, it's just an awareness thing. Maybe people ask questions.
And I think from a planning perspective and a parks manager and steward, I think let's see what comes out of our Green Issaquah initiative and what that might help us set the stage for a larger citywide conversation about fire management, especially in some of our resources, because that's a whole nother set of planning that we're not quite prepared for
That's
to do,
exactly.
but it is very important, I agree.
Not great. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I thought you guys did a fantastic job. Someone who wasn't here in June of last year to watch this thing conceived. It was very easy to read, so big thank you to the ad hoc committee and as well as the staff. Again, I think it's all been said, but the organization, the flow, very easy to follow.
Great, thank you.
30 seconds. I would actually agree with the whole wildfire. I know we're going to work on it, but the importance, I am in agreement with that. I think it's very, so thank you for bringing it up.
Janice?
I'm also new to the document, and I did find it well organized. I watched the way you had parsed everything out. I was really impressed with the work that had been done. I think one thing that might help is a header section, like an executive summary that lists the goals and the subheadings, not little points, so that kind of like a table of contents. People find things.
Great suggestion.
What are the next step for this document? So it goes to council, and then this becomes the strategic, or the park's strategic plan. So the one that you're
Yeah.
currently holding is now outdated.
So the policies within it will be outdated.
Got it, okay.
So we will update those, and then two, in the next update of the comprehensive plan's park element, these same goals and policies go into that. So that's why they're somewhat of a higher level policy than some other design standards and stuff. Yeah, so those are the next steps, and then again, in 4 years, we'll be doing a lot deeper dive into the goals and policies as part of the park strategic plan update.
I think we'll learn a lot in the next 4 years.
I would agree.
To add on to what Jennifer said is, council will adopt them, and then it'll roll into the comp plan that you guys will have the public hearing on, I think, in October. So it'll be the same ones that you're already looking at, but it'll be part of the comp plan, like you've already seen the land use element last time. It'll be part of that sort of layer cake that we're feeding you so that you don't get the whole thing at the end. So this will come back to you. And maybe we'll have cake, who knows?
So do we have to recommend that it goes forward the way it's written?
That'd be great.
So with that, we recommend by having somebody makes a motion to forward it. So I need somebody to make a motion to forward it to council.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to forward the goals and policies as is to the city council.
Would you like to add the two things that have been added, or do you just want to assume that?
I would like to add the two new goals, Goal C.
No, the goals will be in there. I mean, Janice and Randy had brought up two suggestions. Are they, do they need to be addressed, or is
sounds
it
like
just a matter of formatting?
It sounds like the fire thing, we're waiting to see if that's going to be addressed in
I think
for
there's
Tara.
There's two ways we can address that. We can wait and do it, include it in the next update, wait and see how, what the Green Issaquah Urban Forest Management Plan comes forth with, and address it in the next update, or we can add that to a policy now if you so choose. I would just like direction as to which policy you would like it added to.
Jennifer, guys, the next update will come to us, will be done at the end of the city's plan.
About 4 years.
So Jennifer, if we add it to a policy today about the fire, would that make it more helpful for you to go to Futera and say, we have there's interest in the fire?
Ron, I have to, if I'm going to follow there is a motion on the floor, and I need,
I take my motion. It looks like, no, it looks like we wanted, exactly.
yeah, there
no,
will be discussion for it, so
except in 4 years, right?
No, I'm talking about the motion.
the motion, we will have a discussion after we have a second on the motion. I just wanted to know if you wanted to add them up front, or you just want to go and say.
I think we could add Janice's recommendation for a table of contents. She so chooses.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a substantive change in any way. It's really just convenience for formatting purposes.
Okay. I just want to make everybody have their say. So if you want to add that, there's a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, now we can open up for discussion. Does anybody want to have any further discussion?
I should have probably mentioned that I believe that Eastside Fire and Rescue is in the process of doing a specific examination of this, not the park area, but some of the residential areas as a result of some concerns that have been expressed by citizens, and Eastside Fire and Rescue has apparently, from what I have learned from them, already done a study on this subject and believe that it is not an existential threat. So my concern, excuse me, when I suggested just using the word wildfire as in there, along with other threats to the park system, is because this is an issue today that most of us are not aware of. Again, I wasn't, and it's so if it's going to be addressed in the terms of policy and planning with a stamped plan to do that, then that's fine. But I just think it's going to be overtaken by discussion soon between the city and Eastside Fire and Rescue.
Okay, so you don't want to make an amendment to the,
I
That's
don't
fine.
know what I would make an amendment. If we're not going to put if we can't put the word in there as another threat, just one word, then I'm we'll just see where it goes. So, fine.
okay.
Motion to add the word and see
That's
if you
what I'm
get a
getting at.
second.
Well, all right, I would make, so I'm sorry, we haven't voted on,
No,
this is discussion. I would like to, in addition to Commissioner Carl's recommendation, also make a recommendation that the word wildfire be identified as one of just right there as one of the threats to the park that has to be taken into consideration.
okay, so there's an amendment on the floor that's been seconded. So if you want to add that, you can add an amendment to the motion.
A separate amendment. Okay,
Yes, that has
so-
to be approved before that it will go into the amendment, the original motion.
So I move that the word wildfire be included in the present list of 2 items that are identified as habitat restoration, open space. And it just be,
So these, if I'm,
let me fall back and regroup here. When I read that, I was under the impression that that was listing specific threats to park land, parks, and it doesn't use the word threat, and it's certainly part of habitat restoration, so I'm not sure that that would be a place for it to go.
so if I could just
So I'll
clarify.
withdraw it.
Okay,
I know there's a motion on the floor, so I just wanted a point of clarification. Last year, when we came before the PPC, a finding of fact was issued, and these were the 3 items included in that finding of
Right,
fact.
I understand.
okay, so you've
I'll withdraw.
removed. Okay, so we're back to the original motion. Any other discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of sending this on to the city council with the suggestion that there is a table of contents in the beginning of the plan, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we are recommending it to go forward to city council as it is written. So are
Thank
there
you.
any other things that you would like to update us on?
I wanted to ask Jen, and can you give us any update on the tree canopy? Even just a squinchy little bit?
Most certainly. As part of the urban forest management plan, we have been tasked with doing a tree canopy assessment. That work has been contracted, and we have a draft plan before us. We are meeting with city administration next week to review the document and determine a path for presenting it to council, so on. So,
And the exciting part for you all is there's goals and policies in the comprehensive plan now on the tree canopy in the land use element. And what the study finds out will be integrated, if some of the numbers change, or if we want some of the numbers to change, or if we want something to change based on the new study, we'll get to talk about that. So I'm really excited about what the results are going to be. So I wanted you to be excited that that's coming soon. I can tell you.
more
you're
work
excited.
underway.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So when you're looking at the tree canopy and you're deciding how big it is, do you take the hillsides and use that as the tree canopy?
It is
How do you balance it with the rest of the area?
That's a really good question. So our consultant team uses GIS, LiDAR, a bunch of variations, and it's done citywide. So it does include open space, built environment, vacant lands, roads, you name it. Every open waters are taken a look at, and there's areas that are determined that are plantable and non-plantable areas. And so those are being assessed, as well as there is a comparison piece to the last study that was conducted in 2012. So there will be a piece of that, which will likely lead to any future policy conversations you may want to have or may not want to have. So more to come on that, but it's a really fascinating GIS. And as part of this work, the consultant also provided an online tool that we'll have for a 3-year period of time where you can go in and see our tree canopy, look at it interactively, as well as look at other cities who have done it as well.
And the
So
goal is 50%?
I believe it's 51. 51. So.
Randy?
Madam Chair, there's something that I had noted since you brought up the hillsides, that I have seen a city map in one of the Development Commission meetings. I don't have any recollection of how or why it came up, but it specifically shows portions of Squawk Mountain that are still zoned as single-family residential. And it came up because there's apparently a lot of the top of Squawk Mountain that is zoned single-family residential as of now. So can we, I think that map, that availability, whether it's just a link, say here's the map, or whether we could see it if other commissioners agree with me. I think the reaction I could appropriately describe as kind of surprised. It was a map.
The zoning map, or do you mean the
You
vacant
know, I've
parcels
seen
that
this-
are left?
It was, we just got the thing in the mail from the city that showed all of the, basically it said there can't be any development because here's all the land that is zoned as single-family residential. It's the whole mountainside.
Right.
But what I was referring to was a colored map that showed specific, like a profile, if you would, of Squawk Mountain that showed areas in, I believe it was green, that were zoned single-family residential that had not been, they're just trees now. They're open space park. It's not parks, that's the point. They're not.
So it's still privately owned and could
Yep.
be developed?
Yep.
Because
and
it's vacant? Okay.
It's SFR. And I looked for
SFR.
it specifically, single-family residential.
Okay.
I looked
Yeah,
for-
R isn't a
Yeah.
thing, but single family I get.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So the point is that when it comes to tree canopy and the profile on the hilltops, and I think that's what the discussion was when we were looking at something, one of the taller buildings, and so the whole question was the code that says you can't block the view of the mountains of 5 stories, whatever it is.
Right.
But I think it was in that context that there was a map, that there was an illustration that showed how much of the Squawk Mountain was still undeveloped, but zoned single-family residential.
Right, because I can tell you the whole thing is zoned single family except for the cemetery and the little park that
I think
it's
we're
the
talking
cemetery and
about
the
the land.
something. But the higher up, but we could certainly make a map of what's vacant.
That would be great. I think it would be interesting to us, but I think the way it was brought up, and I could be wrong because it was a while back.
And
but
I can ask Lucy, does it sound like something Lucy would have presented?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I wish I could.
Okay.
And it's probably on the city website somewhere. I looked for it, but I'm the last guy in the world.
That narrows it down so
Yeah,
much,
my
Randy.
own address.
But I know we could make a map of the vacant land
Yeah.
that's left on
I
Squawk
just-
Mountain.
I think it would be.
Because a lot of it's
interesting for us.
in critical areas, though, because it's steep
Yep.
slopes. So
That's-
you couldn't,
it
even
was-
though it's vacant, it's not developable because it's steep. But we could
Yep.
certainly figure that out.
And that's a key point. It's zoned single-family residential, it's undeveloped, it's in private ownership, but it probably couldn't be developed because of the slopes.
Correct.
But there's still some of it that isn't that way. So
Right.
it's just a thing that's kind of to tuck into.
So I think when you're doing your canopy,
This,
that's the thing, is if it's still zoned single-family and it can be developed, then you can't count that necessarily, those trees, as part of the tree canopy.
Yeah, you could count them today.
You can count them today, and then in
Yeah.
the next update, should it be developed and let's say all the trees were taken down, then it would be addressed in the next update.
And the good news for Squawk Mountain is so much of it is steep slope that hopefully the trees are going to still be there because they shouldn't be removed because they're in critical area.
Well, I just think that you can look at it that, well, that might be developed. And if it is, then you're going to have to put trees someplace else to make up for
Right.
that 51%. And it's just something that, you can't wait till somebody comes in and tears down the trees and still maintain your 51%. You have to make plans of what you might want to, it should be a discussion.
Right, and I think part of the policies that we put together, the PPC is talking about city property that we can start planting now, that are available for planting now, because we don't have
understand.
control over the private areas.
Well, I understand.
Right.
But it can be developed, the private areas can be developed, and so you're going to have to look at what can we do if that happens.
or it can be acquired by the city for more
Right.
open space forested area. And I think that would be the ultimate desirable outcome, is just to say, okay, this much is still zoned single-family residential, and this much, and this percentage of that is in critical areas, so we don't really have to worry about that. But then there's this territory that is not critical, but zoned single-family resident, and it would just be a good thing for us to have, just as a point. And for the city, I mean, for the planning policy thing, we could at some point in the future, if this comes up, and we've got a lot of development pressure that's going to continue forever and ever, we could recommend that this be considered for further annexation or acquisition for open space.
Well, it's already annexed, is it?
Well, it just gives us, I think it would, just the awareness of that would allow us to look at future policy.
So not to spoil anything, but I think a lot of your questions when this comes forward will be answered in the document and the work and the interactive tool. I think a lot of these questions will be addressed. We just aren't ready to unveil the draft at this time ahead of giving an update to administration.
Are you familiar with that map there, or that illustration that I'm talking about? I have saw it one time. That's it.
It made a difference, though.
Yeah, if you still have it, that would be helpful.
Well, no, I'm going to go on a search tomorrow for it. I'll go right over to Lucy and say, Lucy, Randy's got this map in his head. And if we can't find it, we'll make a new one. And we'll get it to be close to what it is that you're thinking should be shown.
That'd be great.
I think that there's enough planners looking at tree canopy and the importance of it.
If you think it's in something like that, then fine. I just think it's it's a good little thing for us to have that we can refer to if and I should say when that comes up as a policy issue or an issue.
Right, and if I think of it tomorrow, I'll send out the policy that is on the tree canopy, so you all can see what's covered and what's not covered. And so be thinking of when the new study comes out, what you'd want to address.
I'm fine with, if this is something like this, it's going to be available to the public soon, then you don't need to go look for it.
Okay.
But I just think it's something that would be good for us to have.
Yeah.
Soon.
And it goes to council in September, did I see?
I don't know. That's part of our conversation with administration next week, is what the future path for that's going to look
because I
like.
thought I saw it on Tisha's calendar for September, but that might just be
I think there's a
placeholder.
placeholder, but that's, we need to talk with admin first.
So I saw that and went, ooh, it's
So
on.
inquiring minds want to know, so you never know
Stay
what's going to
tuned.
come up in a planning policy commission meeting, so.
Yay.
So it just says that we are interested in creating something good for the city. So, okay, so anything else that
Nothing
you
else
want
from
to
me.
start our conversation on?
Nothing from me.
And our
Thank
next
you, though.
meeting is?
Thank you.
I don't have a packet. I gave my packet away, so I'm going to
August
steal.
8th.
August 8th.
Oh, Old Town Code Amendments. This is going to be exciting because you guys just finished the plan last year and it got adopted. So it's going to be fun to actually start implementing the plan that you just did. So that's going to be exciting.
Okay, so
And do I have just a straw poll RSVP of who might be here on August 8th? So I have a 1, 2.
I will be here.
You'll be Joan, okay. Tom?
I think I'll be here.
I'm tentative, a strong tentative.
Strong tentative.
Okay. And Ron, will you be biking somewhere?
I'm going to be tentative August and September.
Tentative for 2 months?
I have to go to
Okay.
Sacramento to my parents.
Okay. No worries then. We'll put you as a strong tentative for August and September. Okay. And Randy? Yes, you'll be there? A strong yes, you'll be there. Excellent. We got a quorum then. Thank you. And if you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to email me anytime. I'm always there.
So hearing no other input, I'll close the meeting at 7:27. Thank you.